No one made a cherry joke, Tyler.
Because we
Is
don't
that
know.
better?
He's up there with that kind of humor.
It's aviation. You know there's that kind of deal.
Exactly. And I still have one. I still have a cherry right here. See?
Surprising.
There you go. That's what you asked for, Laura.
Well, we appreciate you joining us at the Non Rev Lounge podcast.
Well, I actually consider it truly a high honor. I'm really happy that you guys wanted me as a guest. I know we all get along real well in the outside world, but I can't non-rev, although I fly a lot, unless you count Space A or military aircraft. I guess that's some form of non-rev. Just
I think so.
the best.
All standby passengers, see me at the podium with your seat assignment.
Non Rev Lounge is a travel and aviation podcast. Monique, Lara, and Tyler are three friends that work for a major airline as gate agent, flight attendant, and ramp worker. During this podcast, they will discuss using their flight benefits to travel the world, as well as talk about things that happen at work. They have guests on almost every week to share their travels and stories, leaving tips on the best places to travel or things to do. Enjoy!
Welcome to the Non Rev Lounge. I'm Monique.
I'm Lara.
And this week we have a guest with us. If you're watching on video, you can see our friend Tom Rainey. Tom has been a good friend of our show a couple of years now. So he came to Dallas for our meetup. He came to Lara's birthday party last year.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And he
My
doesn't-
pleasure.
And he doesn't non-rev, and he came to my party.
I do not.
That's big.
He used points.
I
to
use
step here.
points. Yeah, I do use a lot of points.
So he does a lot of traveling for work and for some pleasure. And so we're excited to have him. And he has a job in the industry, but not for an airline like we do. So we're going to hear some of his side about what he does. And so it's a side that I don't know a lot about. I don't think any of us do. Like Wizard of Oz.
Oh, well, that's true.
People behind the curtain.
Yeah,
To
always.
a degree. Until we do get on the news, and then some of us curtain gets opened a little bit. But yeah, thanks for having me. I know you asked me to start with how I actually got into aviation. The best way to describe it is that as a kid, I lived in Warner Robins, Georgia. My dad was crew chief on a B-52. My mother's second husband, my stepdad, was a A-10 pilot. So I grew up near Air Force bases my whole life. But my love really has always been really in the airport world, because I loved the taxiway lights at night. The blue lights just fascinated me. And we used to, when we would leave Macon, Georgia for Warner Robins, as you head south, right on the right-hand side of the highway is Macon Muni. And, the lights at night just mesmerized me. So I've been in love with the airport side of things for a long time. I did end up joining the Air Force myself, get put in weather equipment maintenance, which I am also a weather nerd. I got a job as a contractor for the Air Force maintaining weather equipment on Army airfields. And that job lasted for about 9 years. I had 10 Army airfields across the country. As a matter of fact, just down the road from you guys, Fort Huachuca was one of my sites. And so in the 90s, I spent a lot of time in Arizona, but I don't think I've been back but once or twice since 1998. And that's really just been transiting through. So that led to working on navigational aids on the airport for Fort Stewart with Department of Army, my first actual federal civilian job. I did that for 3 years and met a good friend of mine who worked in Jacksonville Center, who was working on about a tenth of the equipment that I was working on for about $40,000 more a year. So I decided I was in the wrong agency, worked my way into the FAA, and it's been good to me. I can't lie. And I started as just a radar tech, automation tech, and tech ops in the FAA. That really applies to the data within that helps air traffic control move an aircraft from one airport to another. And so that whole process is automation, and every facility has a piece of it. You can think of, when you guys fly, when you leave one airport, you have an electronic file that follows that airplane all the way across to its destination. And that same electronic file gets handed off from facility to facility. It's the same one. So once one facility hands it off, they no longer have control, and the next facility does. So that is like an electronic file that follows it all the way across, kind of like flight radar, but it's ours. And we control that. But that's what I worked on until 2012, and then I came to the dark side to be a manager, and that's when I really learned about maintaining everything on an airfield and in a facility. We had everybody under me. So I learned all about ILSs. I learned about the glide slope. I learned about VORs. I already had a pretty good knowledge of radar and the computers used in the facility. But then I also learned about air conditioning, plumbing, chillers, boilers, pavement in the parking lots.
Okay, so then how are you still single?
Well, I like to travel and pay to play. You got to play to win.
Yeah.
I guess I don't spend a lot of time invested in dating.
Sorry.
No,
You
you're
should-
fine. You're fine.
The electrical, the plumbing, all of that. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, that was my biggest heartache as a frontline manager in an airport, because the infrastructure piece takes a lot of time and energy to keep maintaining. It's just like your house. I mean, they're money pits, right? Well, these facilities are the same. They're only built with like a 20-year lifespan, and we use them a lot longer than that. So once you start reaching the end of those, that lifespan, you have to start investing in the infrastructure. It's replacing things because the parts you can't get anymore. It's just a normal life cycle of things that every organization in the whole world experiences. So it's that reinvestment cycle, but those things affect the controllers in a way that I didn't know prior to becoming a manager. So a lot of time and energy is spent on that stuff,
But
more so than the equipment.
So you were in Louisville, I'm guessing, for that job?
Yes. I started in Dayton, Ohio as a tech, and then I got to Louisville.
That same job then? Or what you did there? Is there someone that does that basic job at every
we
airport?
had two of those. We had two guys like me. But basically in a nutshell, every airport has at least one. Some have more than one. And some airports, bigger airports, we call them core airports, like Phoenix or LA or Atlanta. They might have 3 work centers, and the work might be divvied up, if you will. They may have one work center that only works on that infrastructure stuff, and then another work center that does the nav age. There's another work center that does the radar automation. So they split it up. Louisville, they're pretty busy, especially at night moving cargo. We didn't support the business rules that were in place at the time when I was manager there. Just didn't support the number of technicians to divvy up that workload. So we did it all out of one. And then there was a side work center that handled smaller airports, which we called that outside the fence. They did your munis and your non-fed facilities and traveled around the countryside. Those are good jobs if you like windshield time.
All right, so we wanted to ask you some FAA questions because you're in the FAA. I feel like it's really great, but we don't necessarily know everything that is involved. We're not going to find her, but we're just like, what is it that is all under the FAA umbrella? Because I think there's a lot. And then you could tell us, we're going to say a job, is that FAA or not? If it's not, let's know, or maybe you could expand a little bit if you know a little bit about. So we want to go first, or we go first?
I'll go first. I was told that painting your nails on board the airplane while it's in the air is an FAA violation. True or false?
Ooh, that's one I'd have to look up. I don't know. My gut says knowing the FAA is probably true, but I've been hazarding to guess nobody enforced.
Well, because if crew doesn't know who's actually going to enforce it.
Well, that's what they say.
Yeah,
The FAA says that.
Yeah, I can only guess maybe the chemicals.
Thank you.
But that's one thing. I don't work in the regulatory side, so these are going to all be guesses for me probably.
I like that. That's okay.
When a pilot makes a mistake and the controller gives them a number to call, are they calling the FAA?
Yes.
So that's what they're the ones that talk to them and whatever, making sure they're doing things right.
Yes, that will be whatever facility to which they were working.
It's like
that's a direct
when
number.
Harrison Ford landed on the wrong runway or whatever it was.
On the golf course? On a golf
He did it
course?
twice because there was once at an actual airport. I don't remember if it was LAX or one of the, like Ontario or something, but yeah, Harrison Ford got caught doing that and gave him a number to call.
Yeah, he probably talked to the guy he was just talking to, or that guy's supervisor.
Can they sanction him? Sanction
And
them?
Or later.
Yeah, I don't know if they directly talked to the controller that they were involved with, but there are staff in facilities that handle these types of things, and that's probably who they actually talk to. It is the facility number, and they will do a quick conversation, and then I believe, and again, this is not my area of expertise, but I've witnessed it. I believe they'll hand that off to flight standards at some point if they have to, and I don't know if there's a progression. Like Monique, you said it twice, right? There may be some progression, like when you get pulled over by the cop. The first time's a warning, the next time is something a little more harsh. I don't know, but yeah, it's definitely the FAA.
Okay. Monique, do you have that on, or you want me to go?
Do you have a badge? Like, do you get an actual badge?
No, I have an ID card. I don't know if that's what you mean by badge, but no, just an ID card.
Does
That
it have
looks
your
like
photo on it?
It does have my photo.
Does
on
it come in a black?
But
Oh.
it comes in a, I'm not surprised I'm not still wearing it, actually. No, it's a standard ID card. Funny story though, the picture hasn't changed since 2008. And my daughter says I'm going to get arrested one day for having a fake ID. And the little story behind that is you're not required to get your picture changed at the first expiration date. You can continue with the same photo that's in the system for your subsequent card. And then the third card, you have to get a new photo. But my third card happened during COVID and there was nobody available to take my photo. So I got a third card with a 12-year-old photo on it, basically. And so I'm about to reach 18 years with the same photo. So yeah, I get some weird looks.
Okay, so Tom, I have the same thing happen to me at my airline because back in 2005, they took our photos when we merged, and that's the same one. And I'm just riding it. I'm riding that one.
Well, ours, you don't have to. Yeah. So there's agents that have their photos from like 90 and they'll have bangs and almost 80 hair. And it's pretty funny. So it's kind of a thing in our break room is sometimes we'll be like, show us your ID because they're very old.
That could be like an internal group chat or something to compare everybody's ID photos.
If an airline wants to start flying a route, do they need FAA approval? Like Delta wants to fly Salt Lake to Yuma. They don't fly it now. They want it. Does FAA approve that, or is that you don't need to do that?
Again, not my area of expertise, but I think from what I do know, if the slots aren't controlled by the government, I don't think they need government approval, as opposed to like areas like the New York Metro and DC where those slots are highly coveted and metered out just because of the density of air traffic. But I would hazard a guess that nobody would have an issue flying Salt Lake to Yuma.
That might be like more Department of Transportation that would do that.
Yes. Well, the FAA has an office that would do that, right? If there are limitations or they need to apply for those slots, it's handled within the agency. But I don't know if every airport's managed like that. I would just say, based upon my knowledge, a good friend of mine, and you met him, our new business manager there in Louisville. He's been at the Cranky Flyer Awards, right?
Him?
Yes.
I had some whiskey with him.
Whenever he and I have talked, he's never mentioned having to, make requests to the FAA to bring new business into Louisville.
He's a sharp dresser.
He's a fantastic dude.
Yeah.
No, one of the questions you may have answered was, does the FAA, are they over one saying that like the runway's safe? Or if it's an airport's runway's getting kind of older, are you guys the ones that are out saying, you guys need to redo this, or the lights aren't working, or is that they do that on their own?
So the FAA has oversight and there are standards, and that's those inspections and that oversight's provided by the airports division of the FAA. And there's recurring inspections, but the responsibility for that maintenance is solely the airport operator. They're responsible for the lights. There's even a weird rule in the advisory circulars where, and this causes grief sometimes in these tech ops work centers, that the airport has some responsibility to know the status of the approach lights, but the approach lighting is maintained by the FAA. So when they call and tell our technicians, say, you got some light bulbs out, a lot of our guys take offense to that. You try to tell them that they're told from the FAA Airports Division, they're supposed to know the status and work to get those fixed, even though in that same standard, it says you may have to contact us, the FAA, to get it fixed. So, but yeah, there's oversight, there's rules that are governed by FAA standards, but the airport has the responsibility and the onus to make those repairs, keep them up to standards.
All right. Interesting. Is it true that all air traffic controllers are rich because they have to work so hard and work so much overtime?
Mama, are they rich? They would all tell you they're not rich. Is it a good paying job? Yes. There's probably a lot more well-paid controllers by our standards than there are low-paid controllers, but that's a function of a facility, how much air traffic, and, what kind of service time, nobody gets into a position making that kind of money. You have to work your way into it. So, but for the most part, yeah, they're not hurting.
They earn their money. I mean, they work.
They do work. Yeah, there's facilities that are more high stress than others, depending on where you're at, but they do work, and they're working a lot. You know, it's not that easy. These guys, you know, if they make it through the training course, or depending on how they come into the agency, they got to get certified on at that location. And then if they change locations, they have to recertify. You know, you don't have you know, if you're at Phoenix and you get certified at Phoenix, you can't just go to LAX and start working the next day. You got to start as though you're a new hire. You know, you're going back through their certification process. And, and you know, I have seen it take upwards of 3 years to get a fully certified controller, depending upon the airspace.
Wow.
They earn their money. There's no doubt.
Do controllers have age limit like pilots, or is that not something in the rules?
Yes, they fall under the same rules federally as police, law enforcement, and firefighters. There's a mandatory retirement age. I think it's 50 or 55. I think it's 55, but you can go as early as 50, I think, if you have the time. Controller will have to correct me. They have a whole different retirement system than what we do, the rest of us, because of that. But now, if they can get a staff job, they don't say they don't want to quit working for the agency. They can get a staff job and come off the boards, is what they call it, where they don't stay current and still stay in the agency and work past that mandatory retirement age.
So there was an accident that happened recently, and I was listening and just amazed at how well they did. I try to put myself in that situation. You see an accident, you knew what happened. They can't take a break. And that was amazing to listen to how they got planes in the air, they have a reroute. And I just thought, there must be so much training that goes into preparing for that it was really impressive to just see
how professional. They were very professional.
Oh, easy just to shut down and be like, you know, I just saw a plane go down. But it was literally not like just on radar, but physically you saw it. Yeah, it's pretty impressive what they do.
And they train themselves, and they're protective of who gets, I don't want to say they're protective of who gets certified. They don't pick and choose, but you have to make the cut, and they're not going to just let anybody slide in there. You got to make the cut because, I mean, these are people they're counting on to have the airspace and to have their backsides when they need it. And so they train hard and they train them well. And again, the agency, you know, I guess you could say we train them, we run the academy, we get them through that. And once they get to the facility, though, they're training with their peers, their experienced peers.
Well, we have a friend who's married to an air traffic controller, and I was amazed to learn the steps that he had to take. I mean, it seemed like there were so many steps he had to work through just to get up to where he was. And that was in a teeny tiny town, you know, lots of certification.
Yeah, it's not easy. Even on the tech ops side, that my guys, you know, we've got a lot of equipment that the technician has to learn how to maintain. And it's very similar. You don't just come in and you don't just throw them out there by themselves, because we have to make certification statements, which, you know, those are legal statements that the equipment's operating within parameters. And it can take anywhere from 1.5 to 3 years, depending on the size of your facility, to get even one of our guys fully trained and certified where they work by them. We don't try to work by ourselves because of other electrical safety rules, but to be able to count on them to have that knowledge where they can certify on their own.
That's cool. We hear that if our work tablets aren't charged up, that the FAA inspector will come down and say, well, give me your phone. Let me just show your phone. Let me see if it's charged up. Because if your phone's charged up, your tablet should be charged up. They tell us that.
What does that? I have never heard that before in my life. Is there some requirement that you got to have so much battery life? Is that?
Oh, they said, the FAA says it has to be at 98% or higher when you start your day. They've also told us that they'll give us a personal fine, that the FAA will fine us personally for not having that charged up. Or being able to answer their questions. You can ask me a question like, how many seconds does a slide take to deploy? If I don't know that answer, or I can't look it up in my tablet fast enough, I get a personal fine. I've never seen it or heard it, but that's what they tell us.
I don't know. Again, I'm not on the regulatory side. I don't know those rules. That is why I kind of keep quiet generally when I'm flying who I work for. Yeah. So I don't want people to get the wrong. I have no idea what you're supposed to do. I mean, I can watch patterns. I can see from flight to flight. I got a pretty good idea of what certain things you have to do. I know when I'm going to hear certain tones and when I'm going to hear certain phrases, and I know when the safety demonstration is going to happen. But that's just observation. But the nuances, I have no clue.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for answering that.
I remember the time you said that the FAA guy said that you need to have a full body cavity search and you
I think I remember that. I think I can probably tell you who that guy was.
just smiled and said, okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I did. Because I'm a flight attendant.
Last FAA question. Does the FAA think Sully can have made it back to LaGuardia?
I have no idea. I can't answer that question. I don't know. Plead the fifth on that. I have no idea.
Teterboro.
That's right.
That's where he was going, right? Legendary, though. Legendary.
Yes.
Have you seen the airplane? I take it you guys have seen the airplane. You've all been to Charlotte to see
I
it.
haven't seen it yet. I need to get out there. You guys will see it, right? I mean, you saw Lara recently, right?
No, we didn't get to see it because it was closed on Mondays. I had that long layover on Monday, and the whole crew, we were ready to go, and they're closed on Mondays. You saw it?
I've seen it.
I kind of want to talk about Taipei.
All right. So one of the reasons that I really wanted to have you on after we heard about the FAA stuff is you just did a trip to Taipei. I'm planning on hopefully doing that the next once with my boys. So I wanted to hear about just some of your trip and what it's like there. So my wife, because she doesn't have enough PTO, she said, you can go places that I don't want to go. And I think she just doesn't want to go. So she approved Taipei because she doesn't know about it. Because when I started researching, I'm like, I saw a lot of cool stuff there, but I've never been to Asia. So I am a little nervous of just the culture stuff, and I'm excited, but I've also want to hear your take on it and what you did, and then just some of the little things that you experienced, like the money. Like, did you just have to be a credit card? Did you have to buy a card that you put money on to use there, cash, or those kind of things?
Where should I start?
Start with how you got there. I mean,
yeah,
I know you bought a ticket.
Why did you decide to go, and so those kind of things?
There's a kid, a guy, I'm not sure, Jow_Kana on Instagram. I don't know if you follow him.
Awesome.
He's a Taipei-based plane spotter. He's a fantastic photographer. So it's more than just plane spotting. He's got some excellent photos, and it's basically been a case for quite some time. Man, I would love to have some of those of my own. And so I thought, well, I want to go. And in full disclosure, it's my first trip to East Asia as well. But I never took the steps, and I had mentioned it. So you guys know my friend Annie.
Oh,
who's
yeah.
the dentist. And yes. So her parents, I believe they're first generation immigrants from Taiwan. They live in Texas. And so she's born and raised in Texas. But she speaks the language and goes back. She has family there. And so Jeremy, you guys know Jeremy too, right? He's been to Asia several times. He travels all the time anyway. I think it was August. He took like a trip over, and he stopped for like 12 hours in Taiwan on his way back to Seattle, and took some photos. And I was just sitting there one night when I was looking through his photos. I think it was a Friday night. And so I just screenshotted one of his photos, sent it to Annie, and said, man, I really got to get over there and get some of my own. And she was like, well, why don't you go with me? And I'm like, well, when are you going? And so she told me it was a week of Thanksgiving. My daughter, she's a junior in college, but I'm like, well, I have to figure out what to do with my daughter for Thanksgiving. And Annie's like, well, bring her with. So we had a three-way video call with my daughter, convinced her to come along. She had a great time, by the way.
I love that.
I'm sure. I know it's great. I love it too. I'm turning my daughter. She's going from a total introvert to a real traveler. She's traveled outside the country more this past year than I have. But so your wife, Tyler, would probably love it. I think she's missing out on an opportunity, but we can let her believe that you're going to go and have a good time. And she was not like it, but no. So I took advantage of that opportunity because you brought it up, the language barrier. I speak absolutely no Chinese, but I will tell you that they know English. If you're in the larger tourist areas, you probably won't have much of an issue. But then, of course, you have everybody has the app. That might help if you're traveling without somebody that speaks the language. But most of the signage in Chinese and English, some of it a rough translation of English, but for the most part, it's like going to an international airport where there's the native language in English is posted beside it. That won't be an issue. So that's where I wanted to go. I would tell you, I only spent one day plane spotting. The rest of it was eating, a lot of eating.
Okay.
And let me tell you, the food is fantastic. Noodle soup. There's a place that Annie and her cousin took us to. We met some friends of hers that are Canadian expats that teach English there. The beef noodle soup, that's like the staple that everybody goes over to Taipei to eat. It's fantastic, although it's a different kind of meat than what we're used to eating in the States. They eat a lot of beef with tendon, but they have a way they cook it that's the tendons of, supposedly tender, but the broth is fantastic. And this place we went to had homemade noodles. Oh, it's fantastic.
Oh, yum.
The dumplings, there's the famous dumpling place. They've got several restaurants in Taipei. I believe it's called Din Tai Fung. I brought some of this up. You have to get there early. If you don't, you're going to be waiting in the line for quite some time. We did not end up eating there because the line was too long, and we had a schedule that we had to keep, and so we went to a smaller neighborhood type place. And I got to find.
Let's the night markets, or was it restaurants you were going to?
These were restaurants. So you hit on another thing I was going to bring up, and that is the night markets. The night markets are fantastic. That's where you're going to find the street food. So if you like stinky tofu, that's going to be there. Blood sausage, you can get that in the night markets. There's some nice drinks. There's a lot of shopping. They're crowded. It's a neat atmosphere. It's almost like, to me, it's like the Midway at the State Fair.
Oh, okay.
But just slightly different. Now, I stayed in the Jimending area, which their night market is attached to a shopping area that's also open at night. And so there's a lot of like H&M shoppings right there. There's a lot of regular stores, and then there's a lot of other types of stores. And it's a lively place. It's packed full of people. There's another dumpling place where the line just, 100 yards deep.
So now you need to exchange some money so you have some cash?
Cash is king. You can get your money ahead of time. I ordered my money from my bank. I was over there for 6 days. I started out with, I think, 8,000 Taiwan dollars. I can't remember if they call them new Taiwan dollars. Anyway, I started out with 8,000, roughly $30. I don't remember what the exchange rate was, but that 8,000 almost got me through the whole week. I ended up getting 2,000 more out of an ATM machine, and they've got modern bank ATMs. I don't recall the exchange rate being, or the fee for the transaction. I don't know if my bank charged me one or not, but cash is king. There is I think they call it an easy card. I looked this up too. I saw some people use this. You can use it for transport, and most everybody uses it. They use hard cards. I didn't see anybody using their phones. They don't do that near field communication transactions like we're all used to here in the States. Not even for transit. You still had a hard card, wore around my neck, put it up against the device. And we took public transit almost everywhere. And we bought it. I didn't use the easy card. We bought the 5-day card. It's unlimited. You can ride the bus. You can ride all of the MRT except the MRT from the airport to Taipei Town Center. That's a separate ticket. And if you're not carrying a bunch of luggage, we didn't take that. When we got to the airport, Annie's cousin had hooked up a private car for us. And that seemed to be how most people were leaving the airport. Get into town was a private car, and that cost me 1,000 Taiwan dollars. It's roughly, I think, about $35, I think is what I equated to. And it's about a 35-minute ride, but it worked out great. The guy was great. When I left Taipei, the hotel arranged a car for me. Right. It is right around the same price.
Oh.
You can Uber. I Ubered because the bus, there's times where the public transit's not running. So if you're doing anything like in the middle of the night, you might run into a situation where you need an Uber. And I did that the morning we went plane spotting. I had to take an Uber to get to the airport out there to plane spot. And, it's reasonable, but it's one of those situations. And I've ran into this in other places where I used the Uber app, but a cab showed up, an actual marked cab.
Yeah.
So, but it worked fine. Transportation's real good. It's a real modern in Taipei. The only thing that I saw that looked like Chinese architecture really was the temples and some of the art, like the opera house and things like that. I think it's easy to forget that they have a very young history, the country itself. And so that a lot of that stuff isn't there. We did take the high-speed rail. There's a high-speed rail that runs along the western side of the island. Her cousin took us to Taichung, which is a fairly large city about 2 hours south of Taipei. And there's a house from the Qing Dynasty era that there's a museum now, and you can take a tour. Of course, it's It's all in Chinese, but an interpreter, right? Because we had Annie and her cousin, which helped. And then
I was watching today. I was watching it on your Instagram because you had shared that on your stage stories. I was watching your video. How fast does the train go, or how much did that cost?
let's see. I don't remember how much I paid for that. It was, I want to say it was like 100 and it's not very expensive, relatively speaking. You won't break the bank taking it.
So it's a fun day trip with my boys to hop on a train and do a quick
Yeah,
train.
absolutely. Yeah.
See.
You can buy reserve seats, which cost a little more,
Okay.
or you can get I think when the one train we took, the last 3 cars are first come, first serve seating. And then you line up down, well, we got on at Taipei, Maine. And so you line up down below in a queue that got painted on the floor in the last 3 car area. And then you can get on and go pick your seats. And it's generally cheaper, but it was the last 3 cars. And I think it took us about 2 hours to get to Taichung, which I think it takes a little bit longer, obviously, if you don't take it. If you had 7 stops, then there's also an express train you can take on the way back that only has 1 stop before you get to Taipei, Maine. And we went there and we did the tour of the old house from the Qing Dynasty era. And then we took a tour of when the Japanese ruled the island, the governor of the Taichung, which I guess is kind of like the mayor. We took a tour of his place. It's a more recent history there because they've only recently vacated it and turned it into a museum. But he was Taiwanese and his wife was Japanese, and they did the house. One side's very Taiwanese and the other side's built more Japanese. So it's kind of neat. There's a lot of Japanese
Cool.
influence.
That's cool.
So instead, the food was the highlight. Well, what about the things that you did? What was your highlight? Was things you saw?
Before we go there, can Tyler's boys eat without chopsticks? Are they going to be able to eat?
I would take forks maybe. I'm not going to say they didn't have any, but it didn't look for any because I used chopsticks the whole time I was there. Obviously, with the soup, you're going to get a spoon, but I don't recall seeing a lot of forks. So you might grab some travel forks or something in case they have difficulty, but that might be a learning process, right? That might be fun.
Maybe we need to go to Pan Express a few times before just to kind of play around.
And so my daughter had never used chopsticks ever.
Oh.
And within a day and a half, she was doing as good as me and Annie, really.
Good.
Of course, I learned how to use them out of necessity, and nobody ever taught me. It was kind of like my golf game. I just hack at it, right? And eventually some food gets to my mouth. But Annie knew how to teach it, and so yeah, you might look at maybe a YouTube video to help your boys.
That's a good idea.
But Annie she had little travel forks that she had in her purse and offered them to Taylor and my daughter, but she persevered.
So what was the highlights for you? Or what was you want to do?
More night markets. Really want to do more night markets.
Would they all
really
just swim or what way them can stand out?
Well, I only went to 2. So it's kind of tough for me to make an overall statement. But there's a big marked difference between the Jimending night market and the one we went to. And I'm not even sure what the name of this one was, where there were food trucks or food trailers and some little bit of drinking right there on the river itself. There was a night market near there where we went. But yeah, I like to try the different foods. I would like to know personally, because I don't know if there are other foods that I missed out on because I didn't hit every night market that I could.
Oh.
But when you get there, your body clock, is kind of messed up. I was tired by the time it got to nighttime. I started really feeling it. So that's one thing I would really do. I really enjoyed Taipei 101, which is their skyscraper. It looks like a bunch of to-go boxes stacked on top of each other. We did.
So was that worth it? That's one thing I was looking at.
Yeah, it's worth your time. It's neat.
Okay.
If you like that kind of stuff, looking over the city, you can really get a grasp of how large Taipei is. I mean, it is a huge city. That was neat. I like riding trains. Just riding the metro is fun. It's just like any other major American city or European city that's got great public transportation. You can get anywhere, get a map, and even that's written in English and in Chinese. So that was neat. So that's one thing. I did enjoy spotting. I don't know if you've seen photos from Songshan Airport, which is the older airport, where you can just stand right in the approach lighting and get right up to those aircraft. It's an incredible vantage point that you don't get in the States. And that's another thing that drew me to wanting to go over there. So I would have liked to spend more time doing that, maybe catching a few specials that I wouldn't be able to see. But we spent most of the day there. On the Friday I was there, we got to go up on top of some buildings. We found some other places where you could spot. There's a small spotting community there that was, they were pretty nice. We had a kid walk up to us, and our friend Jing, who's Aviation Temptation, he's actually Malaysian, but he goes to school at UCLA. He actually showed up there that week too. And so we all were spotting there together that morning. And a kid that lives there come up, and he asked us in English, "How's your Chinese?" And Jing goes, "Oh, mine's pretty good." And so they talked. And what this guy was doing is he was telling us about everything that was coming in, right? He was listening on the radio. He was looking at Flight Radar 24, and he was giving us heads up about that aircraft. You want to take a picture of that one, and here's why. And so to me, it's kind of cool because that happens a lot when we go to Spot LAX or other places. There's a lot of guys. I'm not a true plane spotter. I like special liveries, and I like the art of the photo. I could tell you very little about the history of an aircraft or how many times I've seen it or its registration number. But these guys that are into it, it's the same thing, no matter where you go.
Cool. Yeah, I'm excited to go. I still need to do some more research, but that Taipei 101 is one thing, and I'm also trying to find a few things that will give your kids. I want to do that train ride. That wasn't on my list, so I'll be checking it out. You know about how fast it went? Just curious.
I think about 155 miles an hour. So definitely not the fastest in the world, but you can tell you're not on Amtrak. If you've ever ridden Amtrak, yeah, it's very smooth. It almost feels like you're levitating. It's so smooth.
Wow.
And then they have an attendant that walks through the center, selling snacks and drinks and things.
Featuring credit cards.
Cash. They're not pitching any credit cards. There are places that do take credit cards. The major hotels will take them. You can use the credit card with the Uber app. You will find some places, but not many.
And Tom, you felt safe? You felt safe?
Yeah, I did. I didn't wander into places where I felt unsafe. Ximending was pretty safe. Of course, it's a night market, and there's so many people till about 2:00 in the morning. And most of these stores didn't open until 3 in the afternoon. The metro is real clean. The people keep to themselves. It's not, New York City isn't openly friendly either, but they're not openly, friendly like hey or waving or anything. But yeah, I felt perfectly safe. I never really once felt like I felt in danger or if I was in a bad neighborhood. I'm sure that's there. That I didn't come across it.
Thank you.
Okay. Good. I'd keep researching. So I just want to, if there's something I should plan my travel around. So it's like, I don't know.
So breakfast, though, that's another meal I really, really enjoyed. There's traditional breakfast that I had, and they make this. Annie told me that everybody eats this for breakfast. It's kind of like a donut sandwich, I guess, but it really wasn't a donut. It's a lot of starch and kind of crunchy. And it was okay. You'll find that pretty much everywhere you go. That's a breakfast joint. But what I really liked, there were two things. They make this sticky rice roll. It's like a burrito that's got meat on the inside, but it's sticky rice, comes wrapped in plastic, and that's fantastic. And the other thing they have is they're egg crepes, and I forget the Chinese name for it, but you can Google it and find them. But it's basically like a flat bread with eggs in the middle, wow. and you dip it in like syrup with hot sauce on the side. And you mix those two together, and you dip it. Oh, it is fantastic. And then for lunch, one of my favorites, there's a lot of places you can get pork rice. It's just like really fatty pork on top of sticky rice, and it is so good. And it's cheap. Then the pork belly buns, they love their dumplings and their buns. So if you like bread, you'll be good. And you take the pork bellies, open up the bun, and you stick them in there and make like this little mini slider. They make some kind of a bun that's got egg yolk in the center. They take the egg yolk and it's like a piece of bread with the egg yolk right in the middle, and you eat that. That's good too.
Yeah, it sounds awesome. When you were leaving, heading to the airport, how was the airport? Is it nice new one? Is it easy that you had to be there 4 hours early, or what was your take on the getting to that airport?
Depending on the airline you're flying, I flew Delta because we were in Seattle. We were in the Northwest for a different reason, and so I took the Seattle nonstop to Taipei. And getting to the airport, yeah, the airport's modern. It looks just like any other airport you've been to. But I think it's their only flight that day. And so we were all in line waiting to check in like 2 hours. I was there, actually. We were there. Of course, I'm an airport nerd, so I got there really, really early, a lot earlier. I don't think you need to be there. 2 hours would have been adequate. Because once the ticket counter opened, we got checked in. That was normal, like anywhere else you've been. You have to wait though. They put your bags in the X-ray machine, and you can't leave until you see your bag go across the screen, and then you can walk away. They work, I guess, in case they have a question, they want you to be there. It's kind of like in America, if you carry a weapon and check your weapon, they make you wait 10 minutes before they let you go to your gate. The security, there was a lot of people in security, but it moved really fast. And they've got like electronic customs where you just walk up. If you've registered, so you can before you land, you can do an electronic check-in with customs in Taiwan, and enter in all your information. And then they'll have that at customs when you come through, and they'll match up what you've already put in with your passport, and you get into the country pretty quickly. And getting out through that same process is pretty easy. You just walk up to the machine, and they just verify you on a face, pretty much just like they do at the TSA pre-check, and it just tells you yes or no. But yeah, security is pretty normal. I think it didn't add any extra time that I could tell.
You walk around going in your head, FAA violation, FAA violation, FAA violation.
The FAA gave those up years ago.
So thanks for coming on to be a guest. So I really appreciate it. I look for a lot about FAA stuff and about your trip to Taipei and Taiwan. I'm excited to go. I looked a little last morning, so sorry if people are missing here. Something happened. But are you going to be at Yorkfest, I'm guessing, this year?
Oh, yeah.
What?
No, most definitely. Well, thanks for having me on.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. It's an honor. Somebody can get some benefit out of my travel.
If you want to reach us, you can find us at the Non Rev Lounge podcast at gmail.com. Everyone stay safe. Bye.
This has been Non Rev Lounge. This episode was sponsored by Staff Traveler, which is the #1 app to get your non-rev loads. It is used by over 800,000 people from all airlines the world over and built to make your non-rev trips easy and stress-free. Sign up now for free at stafftraveler.com/non-rev lounge.
I was talking to, was it you, Lara, last night? I said, I'm excited to hear about Taipei. And she goes, are you just choosing guests so you can prepare your trips? Because our last guest, Kim, we're planning on copying her trip as followed after. So it's like, I guess that's all my guest is for.
They just happen to fit steering.
Great. And you're lucky because it's still somewhat fresh in my mind. So there are things I haven't forgotten. I would go back tomorrow if I had the time and the money. And I got the money, I just don't have the time. But, money I would choose to spend somewhere else yet. Yeah, I hadn't planned on drinking today at all, Laura, but
Sorry.
You're a bad influence on me.
I said, well, I've got to have a old fashioned because Tom likes old fashions.
That's actually false.
False.
I love bourbon. I don't love old fashions.
We don't usually have this many technical difficulties.
It happens. I was in tactical communications for a while in the Air National Guard, and you could have a perfectly working radio link and all that. When you pack it up and get to the next location, it may take you a week to make it work again.
Now she's blurry.
It's not the old fashioned.
Maybe.
Making her blurry.
That was fun, Tom, having this cocktail with you.
That's right. Now I'm going to need another one since I've already started.